Hello, friends. This evening's class, or maybe it's the morning for you, or the afternoon, depending on where you are, in every sense, we are going to look at an extremely important aspect of our experience, and that is freedom of will. The reason that it's important is because we determine our efforts based on what we believe we can do, based on our sense that we can initiate some kind of a thought or an action, carry it out, and by doing whatever we understand to be the process of motivation or movement in reality, that we can arrive at something that we want, that we can fulfill our idea of pleasure. And when you ask people in general about what area of life they have free will in, most people will say everything. I am free to choose to do anything that I want. And of course, in democracies, this is what people are taught, from the time that they're children. You have the freedom, anybody can grow up to be president, or however we express these ideas of the ability to move from some small circumstance to a great one in which we fulfill something that we want. The reason it's so important to analyze whether this is really so is that we put tremendous effort. We design our entire lives, or even if we don't design it, we find ourselves spending our entire lives in certain kinds of efforts in order to reach some goals that we determine for ourselves, with the idea that we're free to pick a place, aim at it, and along the way have all of these experiences and so on by our choosing. And we take responsibility for certain things, we put effort into certain things, and we have to look at the results. In order to be able to work in Kabbalah, we need to know where we should be putting our efforts, what we should be spending our time on, how we should be spending this incarnation. I mean, a person can spend their entire life along certain lines, and they can discover, well, maybe that's not really the way that it is. Of course, the whole wisdom of Kabbalah being about the wisdom of reception, how we actually respond to a system that we are embedded in such a way that instead of being sort of imprisoned by it, we are really not only guests in it rather than prisoners, but actually we can rise to a place where we really can determine these kinds of things. But do we have freedom now? So let's look at the whole question of freedom, and we'll do it framed inside of an article by Bala Salam called The Freedom. And he addresses it on the largest possible scale. Not just the scale of sociology and science or belief, but in a way that incorporates all those things so that it answers a question not just about some small freedom according to some small desire, but the entire scope of existence that embraces all of life and all incarnations, in a sense. Everything that we think of as the realm of reality, where in that entire picture does it exist? To start, though, there's a question from Luis from Argentina, who Louise, you must have already looked ahead into the article and discovered certain things in it, and now you have a question about it, and this is good. As we go through this article, please, friends, make your questions specifically about the ideas in the article and or about phrases in the article, but let's stick very, very close to the author's thought here, because that's where the maximum benefit is going to happen. We will open up much more together if we go that way, if we walk together along the path that Bala Salam is making for us here than if we just throw in a lot of random stuff. So I'm going to choose questions that move along with the article in terms of the general idea of freedom and the specifics in the thoughts in the article. Louise is asking, where can I find the proper environment? One usually does not have the chance to find the adequate job or working companion. We need to understand the scope of the analysis that we need to do with our life. We have to look at our situation from the largest possible view. We're looking at the purpose of life itself, the purpose and how to fulfill that purpose, freedom and where freedom lies in its ultimate. So when Bala Salam speaks about an environment, as he does farther down in this article, he's not speaking about those environments of the general society that we find ourselves in. Those environments, as you say, are inadequate to really bring us to any kind of freedom or supply us with the kinds of desires that are really going to help us to attain spirituality and where freedom actually lies. So he's not speaking, and Kabbalah is not speaking about anything to do with your job or your working companion or anything like that. It's speaking about the kind of environment that a person needs to be able to leverage the laws of nature that determine everything, so that we can find that one pivotal point that is actually within our free will, and to use that point to sling and pivot, to turn everything in the system so that it will take us where we want to go. But we have to find out where that is. In order to find that out, we have to know where we are in the first place. We have to go through a process of elimination and look at the question of freedom itself. So let's begin the article. And he starts it out with a quote from Midrash, which Midrash is a Kabbalistic book which elaborates on ideas in the 5 books of Moses, so that it can be understood on its spiritual level. Although those who study it now don't actually study it that way, and we don't generally use these books at all in our study. But Bala Salam used it because of the people that he taught. They understood these things, they knew them, and they could refer to them, as I spoke about last week. So he starts with the quote, "Carved, harut, on the stones. Do not pronounce it carved, which is harut, but rather freedom, herut, to show that they are freed from the angel of death." So he's making an immediate equation here between that principle, that law of freedom, that thing that needs to be reached, with the overcoming of the angel of death. So we have to think, what is the angel of death really in terms of our experience, not as some kind of a fairy tale entity, being with wings and all of that, but what kind of a force, what kind of a situation and limitation, spiritual law is the angel of death, and what does it mean to be freed from it? So he's speaking here about such a scope that it really is about not just our life now, but life across all generations and about all of humanity from the beginning of time, so to speak, and the forces that work on humanity, and how humanity needs to first understand its true nature, its limitations, and where freedom is in it. He goes on. These words need to be clarified, because how is the matter of the reception of the Torah related to one's freedom from death? Reception of the Torah means the correction of the will to receive into an inverted form, a second nature, which is the will to bestow. It means correction by the light. reception of the Torah means to actually to enter spirituality in the terms that Kabbalah explains it. How is the reception of the Torah related to one's freedom from death? Furthermore, once they have attained an eternal body that cannot die through the reception of the Torah, how did they lose it again, and can the eternal become absent? We'll just leave off from that for a second and we'll go on. Freedom of will. In order to understand the sublime concept, freedom from the angel of death, we must first understand the concept as it's normally understood by all mankind. It is a general view that freedom is deemed a natural law which applies to all that is alive. Thus we can see that animals that fall into captivity die when their freedom is robbed. And it's a true testimony that providence does not accept the enslavement of any creature. It is not for no good reason that humanity has struggled for the past several hundred years before it has attained a certain amount of freedom for the individual. Yet the concept expressed in that word freedom remains unclear. And if we delve into the heart of that word, there will be almost nothing left. For before you seek one's freedom, your freedom, you must assume that any individual in and of itself has that quality called freedom, meaning that he can act according to his own free choice. So he's saying that we can observe that freedom is actually a law. And the Kabbalists tell us that freedom is really all part of the thought of creation, that is, to create a creature and to do good to the creature. How good is felt by us, it's really sensed by us as this ability, this freedom, the ability to fulfill oneself, to in a sense, to choose to be delighted. And so it is a principle, but we can see it on different levels of nature. We can see in animals that clearly, if you take a wild animal and you put it into captivity, he says here, it will die. And even when we deal with pets, dogs and domesticated animals, you still have to make a deal with the animal. You have to play with it. You have to give it a lot of attention. You have to supply a lot of food to the animal, so that in this exchange, it feels less the fact that it is captive, not free to roam and do what it does through its instinct, but to have this relationship with you in a house which is completely alien to its nature. It's a prisoner. So you still have to make some kind of balance with this animal, and we see the necessity for freedom everywhere, because even political systems over time have developed only because people start to feel that they don't have the ability to fulfill a desire, most of their desires. And then a rebellion comes, and a new system gets set up in order to fulfill those desires that were restrained. And that system brings with it an idea of how we should relate to each other, and those are our political systems, and we've seen it over the whole scope of history, where you have you have like a feudalism, and then you have some minimal form of a democracy, and all of these things, and over time you have one revolution overcoming another revolution, always fueled by this sense of expanding freedom. We have a couple of questions here. Leslie from New Jersey, you mean the environment in reference to the people we hang around related to our beliefs? The environment always has to do with a person's highest goal. This is what Baal Salam is going to speak about. It's a little early in the article to really define it. There's a question from Carmen from Venezuela that is not on the topic of the article, so I won't answer that one. Glenn from Maryland is asking, what is this eternal body? The eternal body is a... let's turn this speaker off in here, please. Guys in the control room. Okay. Guys, there is a speaker coming from Rav's lesson in here. Just turn it down. The question is, what is this eternal body? The eternal body is the reaching of a desire that is bestowal, and bestowal meaning that it's a need that has no limitation, because it is not connected to reception for the self, but uses all of reality, the whole body of existence, and receives. It's a body. A body is a desire that receives on behalf of the whole. That's an eternal body, and it is also a state that a person reaches, an attainment that is infinite. It's the world Ein Sof, the world without end. So, yet the concept expressed in the word freedom remains unclear. If you delve into the heart of that word, there'll be almost nothing left. So he's saying, let's look at it and let's see what freedom we actually do have according to the way that we normally think about it. Not on this grand scope, but just in the simplicity of it. Pleasure and pain. However, when we examine the acts of an individual, we shall find them compulsory. He's compelled to do them, and he has no freedom of choice. In a sense, he's like a stew cooking on a stove. It has no choice but to cook. Providence has harnessed life with two chains, pleasure and pain. The living creatures have no freedom of choice, choosing pain or rejecting pleasure. And the only advantage man has over animals is that he can aim at a remote target. That is, he can agree to a certain amount of current pain out of a choice of future benefit or pleasure to be attained at some time. So he's saying that we have a programming, which we've spoken about before, which is the will to receive, which is like the remote control on a toy car that will make it go forward, backward, left, and right based on a very simple principle. Don't bang into the table leg, in the living room. Anything that it bumps into, it will move away from. So what is that inside of us? It is that we always move towards what is pleasurable to us and always avoid, run away from, become uncomfortable with, and change our direction in order to leave something that we don't consider fulfilling to us. We make every choice through a program of bitter and sweet. We can't control that. We're built that way, and we don't actually step outside of that and make any kind of a choice in our normal life. So we are compelled by certain aspects of our inner nature to always act that way. Question. David from Dallas is asking, so there's no freedom in corporality, only in spirituality? Well, yes, that's true, but don't take my word for it, or really even Baal Salam's word for it as he gives us the sort of preface to the article. Let's see if that's really so. And he also says that there is the difference between the human level and the level of an animal is that with an animal, they're working precisely within this law of nature. They have what we think of as, they know immediately what to do in life. When they know immediately what to eat when they're just a few days old, depending on the complexity of the animal, and they know where food exists. They know the right thing to eat. They know where to go. Animals just basically don't make mistakes unless they're ill. They're in the process of dying. They can you can see cats jump as though pulled by a string up onto a high point on a wall. It's amazing what they can do, and it's because they don't make calculations. They are completely in this mechanism of nature, guided by this simple will to receive on the beastly level, and that thing in an animal we call instinct. And every transaction that happens with animals is all guided by that. They don't make calculations, really. Even their sort of emotional life, and they do have one, is guided basically by their comfort. And he's saying the difference between a human being on the level, not of a spiritual human being, but of in our animalistic nature, that is one where we don't have freedom, where we don't have any sense of spirituality. The only difference is that we're still being operated by this, except we can make a future calculation saying that, well, it's worth it for me to make this investment and go through a certain amount of pain, because I know when I finish this job, there's going to be money in my bank account. Like, I will receive, I can already feel what it is that I'm going to receive. I can sort of project beyond the moment, but that does not make me able to operate above the system. I'm still being guided by that system. It's still, as he says, a pure commercial calculation. So he's saying basically, in the first place, there is an inner programming. Okay? Darnold from Ohio, is the path of pain running away from bitter situations? Yeah, the path of pain is to always be operated only by our basic created nature. That is, there's no awareness, there's no choice to move towards a conscious involvement with the mechanism of the law of nature, which is unconditional love and working for the whole. We never choose to do that. We're always pushed by circumstances to do it. We're being evolved in that direction, but by things that are causing us to realize that we have no place to run from it and must eventually come to it. That's the path of pain. And the path of Torah or spirituality is to become engaged with it by pursuing it. That it becomes something, a desire within us. And that's a very different thing. And that means that we don't get these blows from behind. We can already see that in the world right now, the blows are coming hard and from every direction. And what is it that it's showing us? What does the financial situation that we're seeing ourselves in show us? What does this conflict between, well, pick a country, and all of the things that we're heading for now, they're simply showing us that we must relate to each other for the sake of the whole. This is the path of pain. We don't have any place else to go. We don't have any choice about either what physicality is or what spirituality is. What we're looking for here, though, is where is that point of freedom that allows us to see what it is that nature's requiring of us and to choose it so that these blows don't come. I have here, it just came out, I think in the last couple of days, the latest issue of Kabbalah Today. And I'm going to put it on here. So what's in the newspaper, Kabbalah Today? And by the way, you can get this online at, what's the website called? Kabtoday.com. Kabtoday.com. The articles here is the U.S. election. Is it changing the world? The hurricane within. Google. One link that Google can't reach. Woman, the source of spiritual life. Who is the real enemy in the Russian-Georgian war? Cheat codes to reality. It's looking at all of these situations that are pressing in on the path of pain to humanity as a whole, and that require a complete and total change of the systems by which we operate, because every system we operate within right now and every institution is based on this basic inner programming that Bala Salam's talking about, in which we're simply cooking in the stew. We have to come to the point where the work that we're doing here will show people. What will happen is they will see that there isn't any place to go, that we are. Right now they feel like they're in a prison because everything's sort of collapsing around them, and they see that there's nothing that can happen. But this is why Kabbalah is here now. This is why it's appearing now. Because it actually is an explanation of what it is that we need to do to get with the mechanism of nature, what it's requiring us to do and how to do it. But it requires us understanding, not working in every direction all at once, but only in the place that most important button that is really going to change something. So he goes on. Even the determination of the type of pleasure and the benefit is entirely out of one's own free choice. Rather, it follows the desire of others. For example, I sit, I dress, I speak, I eat. I do all these not because I want to sit that way, or I want to talk that way, or dress that way, or eat that way. I do it because others want me to sit, dress, talk, and eat that way. It's in accordance with the desires of society, not my own free will. Maybe we don't see that so clearly, but if we want to be, say, great, we only choose the expressions of greatness from the desires that we receive from the society around us. If I live in a society that says to be George Clooney is great, to be a movie star, or to be the leader of a country, a person can want to be king, but they're gonna want to be king of a country, and the definition of the king will be one who possesses and controls all other people, and so on. I won't be able to choose from a menu beyond what the desires that the society gives me. I will not be able to desire to be king of the universe, to be like that as my goal or my idea of greatness. I will only be able to choose according to the external influence on me. The nature of fashion is determined by a force from society. And we can't escape this force either. It is so extremely powerful, we completely underestimate how much we're hemmed in by the things that we receive from others. Why is that? Why is that? Let me see what the questions are here. Darrell from Ohio, is the path of pain... Oh, you asked, I answered that. Betsy, Florida. So would it be correct to say that our intellect gets in our way on our journey towards spirituality? Our reason serves our desire. Our intellect is almost of no use, except that we need to exhaust it. We need to use it, but we need to go beyond that because our intellect comes from the kinds of desires. So the thoughts that just as I said before, the thoughts that we have about what am I going to desire and what will I follow, they're not coming from me. Those aren't my thoughts. My intellect is not my intellect. It arises in order to fulfill a desire. Thoughts are only the plans for me to try to get the thing that arose in me as a desire in the first place, but the desire didn't come from me. The desire either came from my programming, my inner one, or it came from what I received from society. Parisala from Toronto. Will animals always be animals, such as moving up incarnation to humans? Animals are part of us. We don't move levels in physicality and incarnations. The animal is a level of the creature. It's us. It's a part of us. When we incarnate, before we enter spirituality, we always incarnate. If we're a man, we always incarnate as a man. As a human, human. As a woman, woman. We don't, it's our desires that change, that show us a reality reflected in which we see animals as separated from us and so on. That's not what reincarnation is about. Reincarnation is about the changing of the nature of desire and which direction that desire goes, towards me or towards others. Jana from California. If we don't have freedom and are pre-programmed from above to be criminals, do we have a choice to escape that pre-program for us without being spiritual? He's going to explain that, but basically we know that even if we look at it scientifically, there is a gene that determines, recent research has shown that there are genes that determine whether we have a proclivity to be addicted to drugs, to criminal activity, to being spiritual or not. And it's possible to create experiences within our perception just by touching certain areas of the brain. A person can have what's thought of as a spiritual experience, you know, a religious experience. Even our deepest desires, our sexual programming and all that, we don't own that. This all comes from things that we come into the world with, and we either are on the positive side of it or on the negative side of it, but we don't determine any of that. We don't have any freedom in that. There is no freedom on the level of whether we're a criminal or not, while we are working completely within that programming, nor are we responsible for those kinds of things while we function completely under it. Once the point in the heart awakens in a person, that's when they start reading an article like this and they want to determine, what are my illusions about freedom and where does freedom actually exist? What is it defined as? Is it choosing between two qualities on this level? Or is it focused on something else? So, Ashley from I don't know what that is, but Ashley. So we're boxed in by the collective desires and definitions, and only have access to what is relatively available from society, thus the choice of the group. We are, you know, I think the best way to look at this is to look now at the four factors that Bala Salam speaks about. I'm going to finish what he's saying here, because rather than talking from myself, I would like to use his words here. So he goes on. So you tell me, where's my freedom of choice? On the other hand, if we assume that the will has no freedom, then we're just machines, operating and creating through external forces, which make it act the way that it does. That means that we are all incarcerated in the prison of providence, which, using those two chains, pleasure and pain, pushes and pulls us to its will to where it sees fit. It turns out that there seems to be no such thing as selfishness in the world, since no one here is free and stands on his own 2 feet. I am not the owner of the act, and I'm not the performer because I want to perform, but I am performed upon in a compulsory manner without consideration of my own opinion. Therefore, reward and punishment become extinct. And it is quite odd, not only for the orthodox who believe in his providence and can rely on him and trust that he aims only for the best in every act, but it's even stranger for those who believe in nature, since according to the above, we are all incarcerated by the chains of blind nature, and with no awareness or accountability. And we, the chosen species of mind and knowledge, have become a toy in the hands of blind nature, leading us astray, and who knows where. He says something very interesting here. It seems that there's no such thing as selfishness in the world, since no one here is free or stands on his own 2 feet. But then here he goes on in the law of causality. It is worthwhile taking some time to grasp such an important thing, meaning how we exist in the world in terms of selfishness. He's relating freedom of choice also to the ability that we can make a selfish choice, that we're in a system, but we also seem to experience that we have this choice, that each and every one of us regards himself as a unique being acting on his own, independent of external alien and unknown forces. And how is this being of selfishness revealed before us? Yeah. We experience life as though we have free will in everything. But what does this experience of free will consist of as we have it now? Not as is really revealed, not as to what is really there. what we have now is simply what you could call a lack of data. We have our ignorance gives us this sensation that we are in a free and open space. I don't know the laws that are acting on me. I don't see them. I don't feel them. Now, the Creator did this purposely, because this helps us. This is part of our development, because it gives us the ability to choose to be like the Creator, and that is to build it within through our effort, through free will, through choice, not by receiving it, because our freedom exists in our desire to be like the system, and that will make the system ours. That will reveal. We can only really perceive the laws that govern us. I mean, we really exist. We think that we can move our arms around and there's a free, open space, but there are forces surrounding us in every single way that take the hand and guide it to the place, according to what our best next development is going to be. But the fact that we don't sense any of that, this ignorance, that's what the free will on the level of corporality consists of. But even in nature, we can see that if you take a single cell out of a body and you examine the cell, all the things, the functions that it has, you put it in a petri dish, in a laboratory, it functions to make certain that it maintains its own existence, gets rid of waste, and it is a completely egoistic entity if you look at it on its own. But it's not really designed to work like that. It's designed to function as part of an organ within a body. And when connected to the body, even though all the millions of cells within it are egoistic in their individual construction, that's good, because that means that they can perform a work. They can take a specific job or role in terms of the whole body. First of all, in terms of the organ that they're connected to, and then in terms of the body as a whole. And when you look at the entire entity, as he says, there is no selfishness in the world. It's only within this ignorance, this lack of data that we have, the lack of discernment of what the forces are around us and what we need to do with them, that we have this backwards idea of freedom. It's not freedom, and we're suffering in it anyway. And we can see the results by, the articles here and all of these things that they're dealing with. These aren't things that that the writers of the paper are making up. This is what we are experiencing as a result of taking the cells out of the body, examining them in the petri dish, and thinking we're going to discover something about the health or how to overcome cancer in the body. By doing tests in the petri dish, it's not so. Unless that cell can connect itself in a proper cooperative way with the body, it's still a cancerous cell. And if you put it in there, it will kill the rest of the organ because it won't function correctly. So our freedom doesn't lie in this apparent selfish elbow room that we have to do whatever we want. Our freedom lies in being able to set a goal in which we can be fulfilled correctly, not in some small way, but in some great way. What is it in us, Brandy is asking, what is it in us when our desires are outside of this world and outside of our own thinking and knowing? And how do we find balance in this place, being in the world or not of it? What is it within us that desires to be outside of this world? Well, it's something that actually belongs to that environment, the spiritual environment around us. It is a part of the Creator above, that point in us. If we value that and nurture that, beyond any of the other things that we have in us, nature provides the balance. It allows us to go through a system exactly like we went through physically, in which we are like an embryo in the spiritual world, which is supported, completely and totally supported, is sort of nurtured in a kind of unconscious way at first, then grows to be a toddler in spirituality, then grows to be 13 years of age in spirituality, then becomes an adult, and so on, then becomes a mother and father. It's exactly the same process. And in fact, everything that happens here in this world is a reflection of the fact that that's how our souls are actually structured. The balance is provided to us by the system itself. We don't have to worry about that. Ross from the Sunshine Coast in Australia: if we attain some spirituality in this life, do we keep that level when we're reincarnated? Yes. We never fall back. All spiritual development is cumulative. We very quickly, if we didn't reach the end of correction, when we are reincarnated here, we very quickly find the right environment and continue from where we were. And everything that we achieved in the past incarnation becomes second nature to us, and we build on it. We don't have to work with that consciously anymore. I don't see any new questions from our Spanish friends. I don't know if there's a problem. Okay, let's go on now. So Bala Salam tells us that in terms of our existence, both physically and spiritually, as a generation that comes into this world, that is the all of humanity. We are not individuals, really. We come into existence here in the physical world as an entire generation. It's the whole generation that is incarnated. It's not the story of an individual. It is a story of how much is that little selfish part, that part that sees itself as a unique individual, how is its development going in terms of being able to see itself for what it is, that is part of a collective that has continued to reincarnate. This generation is the generation of, like, if you want to think of it this way, symbolically, Adam and Eve. It is the generation of the flood. It's the generation that built Babylon. We are the sons and daughters of Abraham. It is the exact same generation that was exiled in Egypt and that came out of Egypt. It's the same generation that built the first and second temples. It's one creature. At this point, this collective now sees itself, is starting to experience itself for what it is, which is a collective. And that's why, at this point in time, it's unlike any other point in our development. We are a collective that feels itself as a collective, that is experiencing the force of society and our inner nature in such a way that it's shown in absolutely every place it looks that interconnection is there. And those who have come here have come really seeking that interconnection and knowing that that's really the way that it is. We are one, and everybody says we're one. But there's a serious aspect to being able to find what that is. How do I connect with that oneness? And what does it mean to be one? What is unity? And how do I practically implement this unity? So the reincarnation we're speaking about here is everything has been done just for this generation to discover what freedom is and what forces need to be harnessed. Our inner nature needs to be harnessed, and our collective nature needs to be harnessed on a single pivotal point that allows us to move. So he explains this to us by showing us on the largest scale that there are 4 factors that determine absolutely everything in the life cycle of everything that exists. And he uses the example of a seed of wheat. And from this we can also understand our incarnation as well and the journey that we're on. Monty from Washington, if thoughts are the byproducts of desires, which do not originate with us, intentions also are the results of desire, what are we responsible for? No, intention, from where we are, as far as concerns us, intention is something entirely different than a thought. An intention is actually an act of freedom. An intention has to do with the screen, with the similarity of a vector of direction, that even though we are in this system of guidance, that we are able to be in it, but for a different reason. This is independent. An intention is a decision. It is like really the only area of freedom. But I don't want to go too far into it. It's not the same as a thought. Adva from Philadelphia. When in spirituality, does one realize that he's free? How would that look to someone who hasn't yet achieved it in the spiritual realm? Well, if you haven't achieved it, it doesn't look like anything to you. It's just ignorance. You just don't feel it. Yes, a person feels both sides of the coin because they are experiencing where they aren't free, and opposite that, there is the sense of where freedom lies. Until we begin to see that there are forces working on us, we can't understand where freedom is. So let's look at it. He begins, 4 factors. Bear in mind that in every emergence occurring in the beings of the world must be understood not as existence that comes out of absence, but as existence that comes out of existence, meaning from an actual entity that has been stripped off of its former form to take on its current one. And therefore, we must understand that in every emergence in the world, everything that appears, everything that exists, there are 4 factors that from the 4 of them together arise that emergence. And they are the bed, the conduct of cause and effect related to the bed's own attribute, which remains unchanged, the internal cause and effect that changes as a result of contact with alien forces, and the cause and effect of alien forces acting from the outside. I will clarify them one by one. The first factor, the bed, the first matter. The bed, meaning the first matter related to that being, for there's nothing new under the sun, and any event that will occur in our world is not existence from absence, but rather existence from existence. It is an entity that has stripped off its former shape and taken on another different from the first, and that entity is regarded as the bed. In it lies the strength destined to be revealed and determined at the end of the formation of that emergence. Therefore, it is certainly regarded as the primary cause. So, there are, say, essential qualities and these qualities exist prior to their emergence in the world. And they don't necessarily have a form, they're really data, okay? And they exist in a sort of another realm, and they actually are the thing that undergoes some kind of a process that will take it from its qualities at this point to an ultimate end that will be its fulfillment. But as he says, it doesn't come from nothing. Before it appears in the world, this pure data exists. Then he says, the second factor, the cause and effect that stem from itself. This is a conduct of cause and effect that is related to the bed's own attribute, which doesn't change. All right, let's see, where does he speak about the... Okay, I'm going to sort of paraphrase what he talks about here because there needs to be enough time to speak about this and then to answer some questions. So he gives us the analogy of this as a seed of wheat. And within the wheat, before it takes on this form, this first factor is what exists within the wheat. And then let's call this shell around it a particular form that is called a seed. So he's saying that there's a second factor, a conduct of cause and effect that's related to the bed's own attribute, which doesn't change, a stalk of wheat that rots in the ground. As a result, many stalks of wheat grow, and thus the rotten phase is deemed the bed, meaning that the essence of the wheat has stripped off its former shape, which was the shape of the wheat, and has taken on the shape of rotten wheat, which is the seed that we call the bed. It's stripped of any shape, but the wheat is destined to grow from that bed, which is the seed. So it rots in the ground, it dies, okay? You have a form. It was a seed of wheat, it was a hard little kernel. You put it into the ground, and it begins to decay. It dies. But this actually is not a death. It's the stripping off of a particular form, but it's going to take another form again. But that form, he says, is going to be, it can only be the form of wheat. It's not going to be something else. It has to be its resurrected form, like its reincarnated form, will be determined by the data that's inside of it. This pure information gets transferred to a new phase of development. And then it comes into another aspect of a system around it, which he describes as this cause and effect. It's not going to be cereal. It's not going to be oats. It can only be compared to its former shape, and that's a single stalk of wheat. And as it grows, it will change to a certain degree in quality or quantity, but it's not going to change what it is. It's not going to become an apple tree or some other thing. It's going to develop only along the lines of the data that was embedded in it. So there's no freedom here for it to choose what properties it comes into the world with. These are given to it. And it also is going to find itself in a certain kind of a field of influence that it doesn't have any kind of influence on, because the environment that it's placed in, its initial set of factors that work on it, is really a program, which he calls the second factor, that are designed of forces, really, that are designed to work specifically on the data here, making it grow, either well or not so well, according to the qualities of its program of growth. This program is not aimed at something else. It's aimed specifically on what's in the bed itself. Thus, there is a conduct of cause and effect ascribed to the bed's own nature. That is, it's not aimed at something else, which never changes. That cereal will never emerge from wheat, as said. So it controls, will it be good, will it be bad, will it be strong, will it not be? Now, how does that relate to us? In this first factor here, you can think of that as what we receive from our ancestors. We come into this world with physical, emotional, all kinds of qualities that we think of as us, but they're not us. We receive them, and we will either we will develop them positively or negatively, depending on this first program of development that we find ourselves in. We can't choose these things, and that first level that we find ourselves in, the determining factor, is our family. We receive all of their ideas. We're forced to be with them for an extended period of time. We are constantly under their influence, what they value, what they desire, and so on. And what happens to us in this chain of interaction that we have with that environment in which they choose everything for us, what we eat, the school that we go to, even the larger environment that we find ourselves in, what religion, like I said, what they value, where we become educated, all of those things. They're not determined by us. We don't choose the family that we're in. So the external system of development that accompanies the inner factor, the first society that we find ourselves in, we have no choice whatsoever there. We're completely under the influence of that. And then this is number 2. So this is 1. I don't have any other colors. This is 1. I'll put that 1 here. This is 2 here. Then he says the third factor, the inner cause and effect. It's the conduct of the inner cause and effect of the bed that changes upon encountering the alien forces of its environment, meaning that we find that from one stalk of wheat which rots in the ground emerge many stalks, sometimes larger and better than it was prior to the sowing. Therefore, there must be additional factors involved here that have collaborated with the concealed force from the environment, meaning the bed. And because of that, the additions in quality and quantity that were absent from the previous form of wheat, they now become apparent. I'm skipping here. We must understand that this third factor joins in with the internality of the bed because the hidden force in the bed controls them. That is, as long as these changes all belong to the wheat and no other plant, and therefore we determine them as internal factors. However, they differ from the unchanging second factor in every aspect, whereas the third factor changes in both quality and quantity. What does he mean by that? It's very scientific sort of language that he's speaking here. Around this program of development, this first sort of operating system that works directly here, in wheat, this number 3 factor here, there are specific forces. You can say, well, they're part of the environment. They're alien to the seed itself, like the quality of minerals in the ground, the amount of rain or sunlight, and so on. This is just a specific collection of forces, right? There are many, many more forces than that. There are gamma rays, and there are all kinds of things that we see and we don't see. But those, they don't all count because only certain forces will operate on this operating system of development for the data in the bed and make it work for better or worse. Only those specifically related to that data in the bed. So in a sense, this also operates completely controlled. Even though it's external, it's determined by the qualities that are undergoing development within the seed itself. And here, this is what we would think of as our basic larger society. When a person, say, leaves their family and they move into, you go to school, you go to university, and maybe you want to rebel against all of these things that you received from your family. The form of rebellion is still limited by these qualities itself and by the force, the forces that are lined up in this external society, like wind and so on. But for humans, it would be, what does the society say has value? What is the main idea that everybody agrees with here, and how would I position myself as a rebel against it? It's only one way or another against the same specific thing. I'm choosing from a menu. So I could become some kind of I could become a hippie, I could become a goth, I could become, I don't know, all these different things that happen in high schools, hipsters, whatever. I'm going to dress, I'm going to be, gangsta, whatever. I'll wear my hoodie all the time. Am I being a unique individual here? Did I make that up? No. I am completely consistent with the societal forces. The way that I talk, the things that I do, how my rebellion is constructed is completely influenced by the complete interconnection of this force and how it works directly on whether I'm stingy, whether I get pleasure from giving, whether I have a criminal desire or not. They will come under the development first of my family. What kind of a situation was I put in there? And then what larger society do I go into? These things, they're all locked together and predetermined, and I don't have any ability to make any real choice, I'm still within that mechanism here. Questions? Question from Gustavo from Mexico. Are we slaves of our own desires? Do our inventions and creations limit our freedom? Our inventions and our creations are not free will creations. They reflect our desires and the level of our desires, that they reflect a kind of egoism. And everything that we create in our technology is really in order to extend it. And it's limited by it. Yes, we are slaves of desire. We don't have any freedom in that. Question from Jenny from Argentina. Do we reincarnate in the same sex, man and woman, the same race, country, maybe same family? I'm not I can't answer all those questions, but yes, we reincarnate as the same sex because the role that we play from the root of our soul is determined by that, where that root is in spirituality. And we are correcting our root. We don't change what we correct. If we come from that place in the structure of the soul that is called feminine because it has a certain force and must work in a certain way, we continue to work on the correction of that. Likewise, male. A question from Laura, specifically on the article from Argentina. Is the third factor what we acquire? Well, actually, I don't know what you mean by acquire, but we don't really acquire that. We are under the influence of the collective. Because, as you've seen this drawing many times, because this is what we are. We are one creature that experiences itself, that is really completely and totally interconnected, everyone with everyone else in an absolutely complete way. And therefore, the desires are felt through everyone, and the influence is enormous. And as long as this system functions in a way that every single point here feels itself like this, like completely and totally. Let's go to the overhead camera. Right? Are we on the overhead camera? Are we showing the drawing? Are we showing the drawing? Okay. So this is what I was saying. We are completely interconnected with this way, and the influence that we have on each other is enormous. And any change in one of these has an enormous influence on all of them. But as long as each individual point feels itself as completely disconnected with anything else, then all that we can receive from others is a sensation along that line. In a society like that, it's not that that we acquire really anything. We are simply being operated on that way. There's no freedom in that system. There has to be another layer on top of the entire system where we can say we actually acquire something or really have any freedom. And he's going to speak about that. Did I... Jorge from Colombia, can one assimilate the first factor to the concept of a model? Yeah, you can say you can relate it to machine code in a computer. Just the plain numbers, just 10, 10, 10, 10 in a certain collection that will only take on a particular form when you put the other layers on top of it. What happens is when the seed dies, the outer form disappears, But that data remains. It is eternal. It is already in existence. It's what the Creator sort of gave us that is under development. That's the root of our soul that's under development. So it dresses and it redresses, but the data itself is always there. Paloma from Mexico, how can I work on my desires to turn them into my own seed for the Creator? Well, he's going to get to that. You can't do that exactly. You have to look at the system that the Creator gave us and use that aspect of the system to actually gain some freedom. Is apparent freedom in fact to cover a form of guilt? No, it's just ignorance. It's just ignorance. George from New Jersey. So we're like puppets in a grand play of the Creator only to serve our higher good, and ego creates the illusion of free will? The Creator creates this illusion of free will by giving us the ego and putting us in a situation where we can attain total freedom to be able to operate the entire system from one fulcrum. You know, to get the leverage to do it. Alex from Charlotte. Oh, this is a long question. Okay. How can we reconcile the idea learned in a previous lesson, there's none else beside Him, where it states that the Creator is the only one that is actually doing the influence, with the idea of this new article, Factor 4, where it says that there are alien forces operating from the outside? Or in this context of the alien forces to the other way around, to society, or this alien forces refers to the Creator? This is an honest question. It's not given from the intention of starting a meaningless debate. No, it's a good question. It's an excellent question, actually. In the last lesson, the very last lesson, we don't even have to go back to none else beside Him. Well, let's go back to none else beside Him first. None else beside Him doesn't mean the Creator does everything and therefore I do nothing and I don't have to worry about it. There's none else beside Him means that there is a quality, that a mechanism, a law of love that is the only thing that operates everything, and that one needs to be able to rise to the point at which we bond with that, we become like that. That means that there has to be an active, conscious involvement in this, and that in the end, it all becomes the Creator. Why? Because if I bond, if the creature bonds with the quality of the Creator, where's the gap between them? They are one and the same thing. And then again, there is none else beside Him. Now, in the last lesson, we spoke about the necessity of that what happens is, as long as we see others as alien to us, this system here, let's go to the overhead camera, this system that is the larger society, let's go to the overhead camera. Guys, wake up in there. This system here, as long as we consider this and these people to be alien to us, we can never get a sensation of the Creator. We cannot start to experience where freedom lies. That area that we call freedom is really, let's go back to the other camera. Hello, good morning. When we can understand that all of these things are working together under the same influence, and we start to see what is truly alien to us, these alien forces that are outside of this system, then we begin to see where our freedom lies. And when we make that connection with the other, then we see the thing that is over against the whole thing, and that's the Creator. That's where our freedom lies. So let's go on to take a look at what he says about the fourth factor. Cause and effect through alien forces. It is a conduct of cause and effect through alien forces that act upon it from the outside, meaning they don't have a direct relation to the wheat, such as minerals or rain or the sun, but they're factors that are alien to it, such as nearby plants, or external events such as wind, hail, big, movements, maybe an earthquake or something like that. And you find that the 4 factors combine to the wheat throughout its growth. This is the most influential thing that can happen to it, because the 3 layers that are completely locked into each other can be completely altered by the things that are totally external to it. That is, the largest environment that it places itself in is the one that actually has the maximum effect on how everything operates, because it's the one and only thing that is external to the data in the bed. So he shows that there. For us, what would that be? For us, that is a quality outside of our internal pressure of being guided by sweet and bitter. It's also external to that total interconnection of desires that we receive from our society. It is a quality that even if we come in with, like not so good first factors, or not so good second factors, not such a great system of development. Maybe my family, didn't give me too much, or I didn't have a father who brought me up, or whatever the circumstance are. We were poor, or I don't know. Or the society that I was in. I lived in a bad neighborhood. Or I didn't have any of the advantages, and I fell in with a bad bunch, or whatever. It was limited in some way. My parents had no connection to that society. We were immigrants. I didn't get the advantage. All of those things. Even if you have really bad first, second factors there, you can take all of that and you can place that into an environment that can change and enhance it to a maximum degree. And there is a choice only in relation where we can change something is not within the systems that of guidance that nature has, not within the locked down ones, but in the single place where we can change stuff. I mean, you can see it in human society very clearly. Let's say I want to be a great musician. I'm not going to learn to be a great musician by hanging out with people who are studying upholstery. I may be very interesting to see how you stretch cloth over a couch, and they may be absolute experts in the thing, but it will do nothing for me in terms of my goal. If my goal is to become great as a musician, I need to be in a place where people think, eat, breathe music. I have to be inspired by what they do. I have to get myself into competition with them. I have to be jealous of those things. I have to hear day after day and moment to moment that the greatest thing in the world is to be able to achieve, to incorporate the laws of music within me in such a way that they become second nature to me. That I'm willing to put all effort into it, and that I hold this goal, and it will take everything that I had before that, it will take all of it and turn it all towards the achievement of this goal. You can look at that in any human pursuit. It's the same thing with spirituality. A person has to look for the environment that is consistent with the goal that they have. A person has to place themselves in a place where the qualities that they do have, and the fact that they are a will to receive, and that the Creator, that we came into this with specifics that came from the root of our soul, that it's all managed on every level. We have a single point at which we place ourselves into an environment consistent with the goal that we have, and then all of those forces of nature kick in again, and we don't have control of them again. We have to submit ourselves to that environment the same way that the student musician must. But the advantage here is now that we use everything, even our will to receive, in order to fling us, like project us to the place that we want to go. That's where our freedom lies, initially. What does he say about this? I'll come back to this later. Let's take a look at some questions here. Maybe we can open that up a little bit. More questions about reincarnation. Rosa from Mexico. Can we say that when we finish this period of learning that we will no longer reincarnate because we will be fully corrected? That's right. When we reach the end of correction, there is no necessity to undergo physical reincarnation. As a matter of fact, the things that happen to us even before we reach the end of correction are also incarnations. What happens in an incarnation is simply the appearance of a new desire. It's actually a spiritual desire, and our fulfilling of that spiritual desire with a spiritual light. And we go through all types of experiences within that environment that we place ourselves in. Let's say, as a musician, you don't want to practice 5 hours a day, but you do, and you have to overcome some aspect of you in relation to it, right? So in spirituality, we put in efforts in that environment that advertises to us the greatness of the goal, that is always presenting to us the love of the friend as the self, in order to connect with the Creator. Constantly there. The value of altruism, the value of really functioning, not like that cell in the petri dish, but the cell inside of an organ in relation to the health of the whole body. It's always putting that in front of us. And in that process, we go through experiences of desire and the filling of a desire, and each one of those constitutes the same kind of change that would happen in a person who did not choose to go into that kind of environment and be consciously involved in their own development. They would go through a whole lifetime that would encompass life and death physically before they even developed that much, and then they would incorporate it into their next incarnation. Whereas when you do this work, a person can go through incarnations, real inner incarnations, hundreds of times in a day, and advance enormously. It's like the difference between, being pushed from behind and the speed of light. To become like the light, to become like that frequency of light, so to speak, is to speed up this process of incarnation. This is why Bala Salam is speaking at the beginning of the article about why the reception of the Torah is the overcoming of the angel of death. The angel of death is this barrier, this limitation that requires us to constantly work inside of these four factors without ever having used true freedom to choose an environment according to our highest desire. People constantly reincarnate inside of this system. When we start to incarnate outside of the system, that means we have placed ourselves inside of an environment that uses all of those forces to get us to our goal. You know how they did the moonshot, and how the rocket scientists send the probes out into space? They actually use an opposite force to increase velocity and to determine direction. They use the egoism, the force of gravity of planets, to sling. First, they have to use tremendous force against the nature of gravity to send a rocket out of the Earth. And then they sent the rocket out so that it would, in the moonshot, it would come into the field of the moon's gravity and be whipped around by that egoism of the planet. Its velocity can increase that way, its direction can be altered, and all that stuff. It's using everything within the system, but for a different, higher goal. That's what we do. And that environment, as we learned from other lessons, the human environment is not like the environment of the musician. The human environment is an environment of desires, intentions. We live within that greater fourth factor for us is a field called the Creator. This is what we have to sense as alien to us, and we have to choose an environment that He's given us that will simulate our relationship in as a collective generation against the Creator so that we can get a sense of the laws of the quality of the Creator himself. And that is the books, the correct friends, a group, and a guide. That's what that environment is if the goal is bonding with the Creator. And we're not, Baal Salam tells us in this article, we are not judged by any act that we do according to being imprisoned in this system of guidance. We're not responsible for those. The only thing that we are sort of judged by and reacted to from above has got to do with our choice of environment. He gives us a story here. The choosing of a good environment. Hence you can understand the words of Rabbi Ben Yossi Ben Kisma, who in reply to an offer to live in another person's town and to be paid for it thousands of gold coins replied, "Even if you give me all the gold and silver and jewels in the world, I will not live in a place, I can live only in a place of Torah." And these words seem too sublime for our simple grasp. For how can it be? This guy was a great Kabbalist, and he had many, many students. And he was approached by people in another town. Why don't you start teaching here? But he refused because he didn't want to leave the environment that he was in. He says, this is too sublime for us to grasp. How can it be that he was given thousands of gold coins for such a small thing, just living in a place where there are no disciples of Torah, whereas he himself was great and he was wise, and who needed to learn from no one? Indeed, this is a great mystery. But as we've seen, it's a simple thing that should be observed, that each and every one of us, for although everyone has his own bed, the forces do not reveal openly, but through the environment that one is in. Much like the wheat sowed in the ground, whose forces do not become apparent, but through its environment, which is the soil and the rain and the light and the sun. And thus Rabbi Yossi Ben Kisma correctly assumed that if he were to leave the good environment that he had chosen and fall into a harmful environment, meaning a place with no disciples of Torah, that is, without that inspiration of connection, that constant focusing of their desires on the goal, a place of no disciples of Torah, that he, not only would his former concepts be compromised, but all the other forces hidden in his bed that he had not yet revealed in action would remain concealed. And that's because they would not be subject to the right environment that would activate them. There are still within us, consider the fact that the point in the heart has only just awakened. It was in concealment, waiting for a particular environment that could work on it. There, these forces that might be waiting here, this one, that never got activated in the general environment that would work on the system of development, that would really activate it to focus specifically on the spiritual gene. It would remain dormant unless he placed himself into this fourth external factor that they're calling a place of Torah. And that's our problem. That's the thing we need to do. And if we want to now begin to sense something about the Creator, it's not revealed directly on a one-to-one basis from the Creator to the individual part undergoing correction. It's revealed, the Creator is revealed in the connection of the person within the environment. The environment actually is the law of the highest world. It's a simulation. Just like when you're learning to be a pilot, you go into a flight simulator, and it's not the actual thing, right? It's just a box that has got hydraulics that jiggle it, and a screen, and a bunch of buttons that externally are not the plane. But every possible situation that a person can have, could find themselves in from landing, in some airport on a mountain in Thailand, I don't know if such a place exists, or in Hawaii, or, Dulles Airport, or whatever the thing is, every possible simulation happens there. You're in a box and you move a stick and you do this and that. But when the pilot actually gets into the plane, into spirituality, he actually has learned by all of the things that he has done as a simulation, actually how to operate this system, what it is, how to relate. This is what that environment is for us. We come into the environment, the values that have to do with the development of the spiritual gene, that data in us that must undergo development to escape this system in which we work only egoistically, and to activate its connection to the body of humanity. That happens in this simulation that functions under the exact same laws as the laws of the upper world. That's what the choice of an environment is, and that is why we have a Congress. This Congress is an example. It's a 3-day sort of intensive on being able to see what there is to gain in an environment, how it functions, because it's modeled, the whole environment there is modeled after unity, and how the environment of spirituality, this total interconnection, the qualities of the Creator, it's a simulator of this. So that a person can begin to see from those people that are there who already function in that environment and work in it, you begin to make connections to it. You can make your decision about what is this? Why does Kabbalah talk about these things? Are these ideas? Are they real? Is there a way that a person can really sense this? Is there really such a thing as attainment here? Is it only that people talk about it? You can go into it, you can feel it, you can see it, and you can get into it. Now, this Congress is not, so far, we've only set up the information about it. We've only gotten all of the English stuff out. This is really for all of our Spanish friends as well, and you'll see in the next few days all of the promotion appearing in Spanish too. We need you. We know that that the Spanish CLI is very special, very warm, and very advanced in their sensation of this connection, in their desire, and so on. And we need to. We want you to join with us, and we want you to be able to experience this. So I know there are obstacles. There always are for everybody to do this. But this is a decision above reason. Because you know what happens anytime a person decides that they are going to make some kind of an effort, as we learned from the article Lishma, when you actually determine that you are going to make a choice to choose an environment and to work against your nature towards spirituality, the Creator and nature gives you obstacles that say impossible, so that you can work against it. It gives you, it's like a ladder. It gives you the ability to step on these things and to overcome them. No matter how it might appear to you, in terms of money, in terms of visas, in terms of difficulty, or any of these things, if you want this, go above reason. You'll discover some amazing things by doing that. And this is an international Congress. We will have people from Israel, we will have people from Russia, we will have people from all over the world. We have from Japan, we have somebody coming, from all over. I know I'm a little over. I'm going to try to answer a few more questions because I know you must be really thinking about a lot of stuff here. A question from Carlos from El Salvador. Does it mean that the only decision we make is the place that we are? Yes. Once you go into that place, everything in a person's experience and reality changes. It's like when the Creator spoke to Abraham and he said, "Get thee to the place that I will show you." Leave your father's home and your family and go to the place that I will show you. He didn't tell him where it was, right? But it's like when you change your name, they say, you change your fortune. You change your place, you change your fortune. This is not superstition. This is the choice of an environment determines everything. It sort of recreates a person's whole reality because all of the factors come into play in a different way, and they begin to develop everything that's in us. Sultan from England, are these 4 factors another exposition of the Tetragrammaton at work? The 4 phases of direct light, The Yud Kei Vav Kei, yes, of course. It is exactly, you'll see this over and over again, this 5 or 4, and there is no process and nothing that happens that doesn't work that way. Ross from Australia, so we have no control over our desire to attain the desire to bestow? You do. You have control over the decision of where you are going to place that whole system. You do have that choice. You have no choice in anything else. So but you know what? It's like you don't have to do all the lifting. We have systems in our bodies that are conscious, and we have systems in our body that are autonomic. Can you imagine, we'd never get anything done if we went breathe in, breathe out, beat, stop, We're not responsible for that. We have whole systems that nature has arranged for us that we can set into play while we become like the head, like the Rosh. And from that one point, we can determine where the whole machine will go, but only from that one point. It's very small now, but when we learn about that, it becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger space, which eventually becomes everything. No, a couple more questions and I'm done. Parasala from Toronto. So how do you explain the extreme rags to riches lives of people throughout history? They're born in extreme poverty, slavery, and yet they achieve greatness. How did they do it? Oh, that's all within a single system of the egoistic system. It doesn't have anything to do with freedom. That's all within the will to receive. Freedom is always something that exists outside of what controls you, not what controls you. So there are wonderful questions, very good questions and pertinent to the article, and I'm sure this article will stir a lot of stuff in you, so ask those questions on the forum. There will be, of course, the technical lesson with Mike on Sunday, and I'll see you next week here. Thank you.